Hi everyone, welcome to another APAC Developer Office Hours. For those of you who haven't joined us before, this is basically a session where you can ask us questions live on Android development, and we can do our best to answer them live, or what we actually recommend is that you post your questions ahead of time, and we provide a moderator link for that, a Google moderator link. The best way to tune into this is through developers.google.com/live, and you'll see all of the other office hour style events, or all Google Developer Live events, including the Android ones. So thanks for joining in today. I'm joined here this week by Anirudh Dewani from Bangalore.
Hi guys, it's actually Hyderabad for now.
Hyderabad, I'm sorry Anirudh. It's hard to keep track of your travel, and I often make mistakes, so I apologize.
Anyway, it's great to be joining, and welcome all of you.
And I am, of course, Anchor Cotwell, and I'm joining you from Sydney, Australia. Today I'm in a secret closet. Well, it's not really a closet, but it feels like one. Yeah, so hopefully you've been having a good day and a good week so far. So what we usually do is we go to the Google moderator link, we bring that up, and we start looking at the questions. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Today we're going to try something different. We're going to try screen sharing on Google+. Now this could of course blow up in our faces, but I suspect it should be okay. So let me try that. Let's go screen share, and we will bring up the questions. And today we have 9 questions, and you know, people have voted on them. So it's not too late to submit questions for today's session. This is live, so we will before we wrap up for the day, we will go and check those questions again. So let's get started then. The first question is, looking at the APIs available, is there a Hangout API for web? There is a Hangout API for web and a Google+ SDK for Android coming soon. Is there any plans to expose G+ Hangouts in the Google+ SDK? And if so, roughly when will this functionality be enabled? That's a good question. Before I answer it, I just want to also bring up the next question, because it's related, and it's this one here that says, any word on when the Android SDK for Google+ will be available for download? So we've mentioned this before, that we actually can't share any dates with you externally. When it's ready and available, we will make the SDK public and available for all of you. So let me just bring up developers.google.com/plus/mobile. This is basically where the Google+ SDK will be found. It's not out yet. It's coming soon for Android, as was mentioned, and as I said, we can't really speak to the dates. And the honest truth is, Anirudh and I don't actually know the dates, so we would probably be lying if we made something up, and we can get in trouble for that, so we'd rather not. Basically here you'll find this is where you'll find the SDK when it's released, and don't you worry, we'll be very vocal about it, so you'll know that it's out. But whilst it's still baking, you can go and have a look at this page, and you'll see that it actually describes what APIs are going to be available at the time of release. So I guess I'll just go through them quickly. There'll be a sign-in with Google+, so you can use the identity management side of things. You'll be able to allow users to share content from within your apps. Of course, the +1 button will be there to allow users to engage on Google+ through your app. We also have something new called the History API, and we have personalization. So there's some APIs there. You'll notice that we haven't made any mention of the Hangout API. The honest truth is, I don't know whether there will be a Hangout API. If I did, I probably couldn't tell you about it. So anyways, the Google Plus mobile SDKs for Android, it is coming soon, and you should just stay tuned. Okay, let us go back to the questions. Switch back. And here we are. So that's the first two questions there that we've answered. The next one, are there any plans to provide real multi-session on tablets and APIs? How about some services for games to save the preferences of the user and saves on a cloud level so that they can continue either on tablet or phone? That's a very good question. Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
We'll finish answering this question, and it looks like the next one is from you anyway, so we'll get to you in a minute.
No worries.
Actually, we just answered one from you regarding the Android SDK for Google+.
Yep,
so,
I heard that one.
Yeah, good. So, multi-session APIs on tablets. As I said, this is another one of those, hey, what's happening in the future type things. You know, what you're suggesting sounds like a really useful idea. So we don't have anything to share right now about whether such an API exists or is coming in the future. It's certainly not available now. But part of it is, and that part is the saves on a cloud level. Right now, there's probably two ways that you could tackle this. One is using the backup service on Android. So basically, your app can back up some information to the cloud, and then you know, when you fire up the app on other devices, you can restore that data. Keep in mind, it's not really designed for real-time syncing, but you might find that it's sufficient for what you're trying to do. It really depends on your situation. The other way you could do it is through things like the Google Drive SDK, and use the Google Drive, the user's Google Drive as a way of, you know, storing your data and then pulling it down and syncing with the cloud. There was a really good presentation at Google I/O 2012 this year on using the Google Drive SDK on Android. So I would suggest you have a look at that and see where it lands you. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Anirudh?
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well there. So we don't have any real-time cloud backing up for the session, but you can save your preferences using one of the options, which is the backup API, but it's not real-time, and then you can use the drive, which can be real-time.
Excellent. Cool. All right. Andrew, it seems like someone's bumped you, so I'll just get to them and then I'll get to you. Hopefully they don't bump you again.
That's all right.
All right. We have a question from Arpit, who says, I'm really trying to understand the Android layout framework. I get that you have to override methods like onMeasure and onLayout, but what's the class that's managing the entire lifecycle? I.e., what's the class that measures the top-level container?
I can take that up.
Sorry, go ahead, Anirudh, all yours.
Yeah, so just give me a second to pull up the question. Right, so all your views are, the container would be a layout, like a linear layout or a relative layout, which is a view group. So that will take care of the responsibility of calling the methods onMeasure and onLayout, and all the top-level view groups are managed by the phone window manager, which is the framework class, and that would manage the lifecycle of the view groups and the views inside them, and their layout and measuring part.
Cool, thanks. I'd also just like to bring up a couple of pages that might be useful for this person. Again, if you go to, you can see the URL at the top, developer.android.com/guide/topics/ui/overview.html, and it really gives you an overview on what the view hierarchy is, how it's laid out, what the sort of relationships in that view hierarchy are. In terms of executing the lifecycle, you'll see a lot of the overrides exist in the activity and also in the view. So in the activity, for example, you tend to call set content view, which basically goes and sets the top level view in your hierarchy. There is actually a root node that you can get from the window called the decor view. But this is getting into fairly low-level stuff, so it'd be interesting to just find out, from what perspective you're really asking this question. So check out the activity documentation, and finally also check out the view itself, the view classes documentation, because again we go through in detail to say what all of these overrides are and at what point they're kind of called. And I know you alluded to sort of the fact that you understood these ones from the view, but these couple of pages that might just help you give you the broader picture. All right, I'm going to go back to questions, and we are at Andrew's question, which is, on Android 2.3 and 3.x, I can use the audio tag successfully inside a web view. However, when using the same app on Android 4.x, I can only play the audio file once. The current time gets stuck at infinity after the first play and can't be set back to 0. Andrew, are you there?
I am indeed, yeah.
So I think I've understood this question, but I haven't actually heard of this problem before. So what I was hoping for was if you can just, one, give us an overview since you're here, what the nuances around this are.
Yeah.
But if you can just provide a small sample that I can reproduce this in, it would really help.
Cool. Yeah, I can send you a couple of lines of HTML at some point and demonstrate the problem. It's really quite bizarre. I mean, I've got this web app that I'm wrapping inside an Android app, and it's going to be inside an iPhone app as well. But yeah, it's just playing back the audio files. When you click on the little hyperlink that I've got in my page, it'll play the audio fine multiple times on Android 2.3 devices and 3. Whatever devices. But as soon as I go to a device that's got 4.0 or 4.1, you hit the play button and it plays fine the first time, but then you can't play the sound file again. It kind of gets stuck at, like I say, one of the attributes is the current time, and at the end of the first playing through, it's set to infinity rather than kind of 3 seconds or whatever the length of the sound file is. And doing searches on the web would indicate that you can just set current time back to 0 to set the sort of the playhead back to the start of the sound file, but that doesn't seem to work. So I was just wondering if there was a weird, freaky thing. I mean, I've done lots of searches on the web, and there's lots of people who had different ideas about various bits and pieces, but none of the tricks seem to have worked. So I just thought I'd post the question.
So a couple of things just on that. Then it'll be great if you can also give us the some of those other references where people are discussing this.
Yep, there's a lot of stuff on Stack Overflow. I can send you some links.
Yeah, that would be ideal. And the other thing I was going to ask you is, if you fire this up in the web browser page, the built-in browser on Ice Cream Sandwich, and then also on Chrome, do you see the same behavior on both of them?
Yes, yeah, it's the same on both. So even though it's not even, like you say, if you take away the sort of the web view inside an Android app part and just run it in the default browser, you still get the same behavior. If you run it inside Chrome or Safari on the desktop, it works fine.
That's quite interesting. So I must admit I haven't heard of this problem before. I only had a chance to do a cursory search, and I didn't find anything, but maybe I wasn't looking for the right thing.
Yeah. No, I'll try and put together a little sample stuff so I can send it through.
All right, great. That would be appreciated. And then maybe we can talk about it next week.
Yeah, sure.
All right, cool. So let me see. We asked the Android layout question. We answered that one. And all right, we have someone called Gears asking, how can I make an Android app efficiently? This is an interesting question, and there's several ways that you could interpret it. For starters, let me just say it's also a very broad question, in that there's no one simple answer. In terms of being efficient about making it, it's good for you to go through the docs. So one way to interpret is how can I be efficient in the way that I develop this app. So make sure you're well aware of sort of the APIs that you're using. We have a ton of best practices around it, developing for Android. So make sure you're familiar with those. Familiarity with Eclipse is also a useful thing. In a multi-developer environment, you want to use a robust version control system. But there's no one magic answer. In terms of how to make your app itself efficient, which is the other way you could interpret it, well, again, there's a ton of best practices around there, but some of the sort of the basic ones don't do a lot of work in the main thread, because that's also the UI thread. So if you're doing a lot of processing or you're doing anything across the network, make sure that you are doing that in a background. Like you can use an async task, or you can use threads. There's a number of options there, so make sure you utilize those. Don't reinvent the wheel. If there's some good libraries out there, then utilize those. They're quite heavily optimized as well. Again, this is a very broad question. When it comes to layouts in UI, we've seen developers sort of make the mistake of nesting tons and tons of layouts. Linear layout within linear layout within linear layout. That's just really inefficient, and it's quite expensive too. So those are the things that will tend to slow down your app. Anirudh, is there anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, just a quick thing. So if also you're working with a lot of data, and for example, if you have a newsreader app and you're fetching articles, do use the sync adapter and the sync service, because we have designed it very efficiently, and it batches the requests from different apps together so that the device is not waking up every often. So do use some of these framework components that you have, instead of doing your requests in with timers or backgrounds. And regarding tools, what Ankur mentioned, we have an awesome new tool, the systrace tool with Jelly Bean, and it's really good if you want to analyze the performance and the memory of your application. So do look into those tools before you release, profile your app, and optimize it there.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we have a question from Phung Lam in Hong Kong. In the IO12 app, there is an action bar / spinner. Depends on whether you're in the vertical or horizontal mode on the action bar, and a view pager. However, the tab index will update when you swipe on the view pager. The spinner is not updated. Will it get fixed? So it seems to me like Phung here is basically reporting a bug on the IO12 app. Thanks for reporting it, Phung. It would probably be best if you actually report it to the project page itself, because the engineers that sort of built that app are actually not in this Hangout, and you obviously know the sort of right test steps on how to reproduce the bug. So I would suggest you go there. You may even contribute a patch if you want to. It is an open source project, so I would say engage in an open source manner. Okay, next question. For a person that has not written a single Java application, is it beneficial to use the NDK using native C, as I believe, to write an app? Can it be effective as one using the SDK and writing Java code? Interesting question. So it's, I guess one, it depends on your skills. Using the NDK, it requires a bit more setup. The developer experience or the learning curve for developers is a bit steeper. So knowing the language is one thing, but you still need to understand how the tools integrate, how you set up the build system, how you debug those apps, how you interoperate between the native app and the sort of the framework of Android. And in general, I think it's actually harder to learn all of that rather than sort of learn Java. Again, I mean, that's a generalization. It depends. You might be a really awesome C coder and you're familiar with all of these sorts of things, and so you might find that more useful. Probably the answer is give it a go. and see how it turns out. I think it'll probably be easier though to start in the Java side of things. That the tooling is a lot better, and there's just fewer points of failure. Yeah.
With the NDK stuff.
Yep.
Is it a lower level kind of API than the one that's exposed through Java? I mean, or is it just a C interface to the existing things like location manager and all that kind of stuff, or is it kind of more low level than that?
It's a bit of both actually. So we expose some of the capabilities of the framework to the NDK, so for your C and C++ code, but not everything is there. So some of it you end up having to build JNI wrappers and doing, going back and forth yourself. And not only is that a little bit more work, but then you now have to start considering the performance costs of going, marshalling through that space all the time. So yeah, it's a bit of both.
Hello.
Okay. Next question. I see we've had a few more people join us. So before I go ahead with the next question, would Abhinava or Shalini, do you guys have any questions to ask?
Yeah. My question was related to View Flipper, which was introduced as an extension.
Mm-hmm.
I was just willing to ask, actually what I'm trying to do is I have an adapter associated to my View Flipper. View Pager, sorry. I'm sorry.
View Pager. Okay, yep.
And I'm trying to get the last created fragment on a particular page. Let's say on page 2 I have a fragment which is there, and I'm trying to get a reference of it. What will be the most optimal solution for that? Because I'm not able to get it. When I say get on my adapter, I get a new fragment. And when I'm trying to get it in the section, then it's not available at all.
That's interesting. So you would typically, I would suggest that, whoops, my lights have gone out. That's not so good. Hey, Anirudh, do you want to just take over for a second?
Sure. So I'm guessing in your adapter you have coded to say the get will return based on the index of the pager will return a new instance.
Yes.
You could possibly manage a registry of instances and return the instance already created. I mean, I guess that's a part of your adapter implementation. And
yeah.
So instead of saying case index.
What the solution at this point of time is that I'm maintaining a kind of array list which is keeping the track of fragments that were created, and then if the fragment is already created, I'm returning the value as get particular fragment.
Right. That seems to be a fair implementation to me. I mean, are you incurring any kind of performance hit there, or?
My point is, in case when I'm trying to access this particular fragment directly from View Flipper by saying something like, wait a second, I have it here. All right. If I try to say viewflipper.getCurrentItem, it returns me the index, and if I say get item at, and it returns me the fragment, there's one API in that. If you
So what I would actually suggest is, rather than getting it from View Pager, I would actually try to get it from the fragment manager. So when you instantiate it, you can specify a tag, and then I would try and do a find fragment by tag, or
specify a tag for this, because at the time of instantiation, this fragment, I guess at the time you say get item, the adapter itself gives a fragment ID to it.
I see. So the main use of, is your fragment a UI fragment, or is it just a class that you're sort of reusing?
A UI fragment.
So these UI fragments are going to get recycled. So I would suggest, sorry?
Yeah.
So I would actually suggest, if you're trying to get something very specific, then your solution kind of will work. It seems like not the right thing to do, because the whole idea of a View Pager is that it will try and hold on to, the content for the pages only while it needs them. So typically what I've noticed is that it's your current page and one on either side it sort of tends to keep. So if you've got things that are more than two off your current page, it'll actually try to recycle and reuse those fragments. And that's probably why your get methods are returning a new fragment, because the existing one has been recycled.
But then how can I use the same instances if I always get a new one? So if I want to modify something on that particular fragment.
So this is kind of the difference between sort of separating out your UI and your data layer. If you're presenting something, typically what you're doing with those adapters is that you're marking the data as dirty, and then you're just asking the fragment to repopulate and redraw itself. So rather than directly sort of modifying some state on your fragment, what I'd be doing is changing the data in the background and letting it flow through the adapter, so that when it's presenting that particular fragment, it's going to get the fresh data.
But for example, what the issue will be with this thing is that I have something on my foreground as a UI. It won't get refreshed unless my adapter is created. That particular fragment is created again. So that will again lead me to a different kind of a problem.
Are you calling notify data set changed?
I'm calling that, but it is not refreshing it.
Interesting. Are you using custom views by any chance within the fragment?
No. It's all vanilla views.
Yeah, because what should be happening is you call notify dataset changed. It should come through and basically, redraw the views.
I placed even some logs in order to see if I can get this get view called again for the adapter, but even that will not happen. Get item called again, but even that was not happening. So I was like, okay, what to do?
Yeah, it almost seems like what you're wanting is a static set of fragments, and you're using the view pager for that. The view pager is something that typically tends to recycle fragments and discard them when they're not being used. So it's almost like that's not a good fit, and I would try and have a layer of abstraction that sort of says, hey, this is a statically defined allocated set of fragments, and then try and link them up. So in a sense, what you're doing with your array list isn't so bad. I just hope that the glue between the view pager and that list is correctly managed.
And before this, I just wanted to ask one, maybe it's a stupid question, but what exactly is the difference between fragment state page adapter and fragment page adapter?
Fragment, sorry, what was the first one? Fragment
state pager adapter and fragment pager adapter.
That's an interesting one. I've not used the state pager adapter. Have you, Anirudh?
Same. I haven't used it, but I know it's one of the options available in the view pager library to instantiate one of the fragment state.
Helping me in some sense. I got it from some blogs and I just put it because the previous one was always returning me with some different kind of values, and it means what exactly I wanted, it's giving me with that, but why it is giving me, I have no idea. So I was just curious about it. What exactly is the difference between these two?
Yeah, sorry, neither of us know off the top of our heads. We need to look into it and get back to you.
No issues. Maybe if you can help me in one more thing. I was just having a question. I hope I'm not taking too much of yours.
That's okay.
What is the difference between view animator, view flipper, and view switcher? Because apparently all three of them have been working something like similar to each other. So, is there a particular difference?
View flipper. So view animator does a lot more than just flipping views. So view flipper is literally, I've got a list of views and I just want to say go from one to the next and the next in terms of what I show. View animator, you can do a whole bunch of different types of animations there. View switcher, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. But for the animation's sake, I'm saying I can still animate in and out of a view pager and view switcher, both of them. So view flipper and view animator, in both of them I can do in and out animations, and they will be doing almost the same job. So I was like, is there any specific difference as an API level or something like that?
When you say view animator, are you referring to the view property animator that we introduced in Honeycomb?
View animator is a transition API that you have, transitions API, one of the transitions API.
Yeah, sorry, I'll need to look this up and get back to you. Unless Anirudh knows, what I'd suggest is after this Hangout is complete, I'm going to send out the event for next week's one. If you can just put the question into moderator, then it gives us a chance to look ahead of time and have something ready for you.
Sure, no problem.
I think one of the things is that view switcher can have just two views, two child views, and I think view flipper can have more than two. So that's one difference between view switcher and flipper.
Is that so?
Yeah, I think switcher can have just two views which you can switch between, and flipper can have more than two child views.
Okay. All right. Okay. So view animator and view flipper we are a little doubtful about, but view switcher can support only two views. That's what you're saying, right?
View switcher can support two views, so you can switch between those two, and yeah, you can go through many.
Andrew, either you're hungry or you have a dog.
Yes, I have a dog. Sorry.
That's all right. Okay. Next question. We have, I think Fung has added a few, and they've sort of been upvoted, so I'll just go back up a little bit. It takes longer and longer time after we load an APK for the update and before it is available for download. Why is it? There's too many apps queuing, the new approach for APK update. The answer is I don't know. We didn't realize that this was an issue. Fung, if you are online, it'd be great for you just to let us know what kind of times are you seeing? Are we talking from like 2 minutes to 4 minutes, or are we talking from 2 minutes to like 4 hours?
I've seen something similar as well over the past couple of months. It used to take about 15 minutes from hitting the publish button on the developer console before you would see your app appear in the Play Store on a device, and maybe another half an hour after that before it appeared on the web. Whereas now it's kind of taking about an hour from hitting the publish button to appearing on the Play Store on a device, and then maybe an hour and a half or so before it appears on the web. So yeah, it does seem to be longer these days than maybe 6 months ago.
Okay, let me raise that with the team. I don't know if anyone has raised it before. I wasn't aware of that, so
it's not really a problem. It's just maybe it's just due to the number of apps or something that are out there these days, or the number that are being submitted. But yeah, it used to take.
I don't want to speculate. It could be that. It could be that we have that security mechanism bouncer. That could be more thorough now, which takes longer. I honestly don't know, and I'll need to find out. But thanks for raising that with us. Going back to the questions, we have one from Soham Mundal from Bangalore. Typically, my service stops working after a while after my app goes into the background, and I need to acquire a wake lock or use start foreground. What is the difference between using start foreground on a service or acquire a wake lock on a service? Anirudh, do you want to start with this one?
Honestly, I don't know the answer to this.
That's all right. So I think let's see. It'll be interesting to see why your service is being stopped. If you start your service in a certain way, it kind of says, hey, it's bound to this activity or bound to this particular foreground process. And so when that foreground process goes away, your service will also stop. So it depends how you are binding to the service and how you're starting it. Acquiring a wake lock on a service, my understanding of that, all that will do is stop the device from going into standby. I don't think that there's a direct correlation between having a wake lock and having your service stay running. Unless you're acquiring the wake lock in your activity, in which case it's not getting a chance to background. So it really depends how you're binding to the service, and if you are if you're allowing it to sort of hang around after your main activity's gone away or not. So I would look into that. One way to look into this is just by putting in a bunch of logging statements in there. See if there's a correlation between when your activity is paused or stopped or destroyed and when the service is going away. Okay. Final question. I'll just read this one out. Oh no, we've already done this one. It was the one about native development languages. I don't see any more questions on there. Does anyone on the Hangout have any more questions?
I just had one that's maybe not related to Android specifically, but you mentioned earlier about the Google Plus SDK will be coming out at some point in the future for Android. Yep. There's already kind of a Google Plus API which is hosted on Google Code, I think it is. Is that just going to be replaced, or is that going to be kind of in parallel, or will there be some crossover, or what's going to happen?
Are you referring to the web API that's there?
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of REST services that you can call to get things like comments on various posts and stuff. Is that going to go away?
So that web API will stay, because what we're bringing out is an Android API. Right now you can basically consume it like it's a REST service.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is building an Android API which will give you all the niceties of just having a method call, using the identity manager on the phone or tablet. So yeah, there's nothing stopping you from using that REST API. It's probably going to be a bigger overhead using that than using the native SDK when it's available.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. All right, now before we wrap up today, actually, we've got something a little bit different. We tried to do this last week, and we failed miserably. We basically had an interview that we've done with a developer called Animoca. Now, I'm unfortunately going to have to try something that's less than optimum to play this, and to do that, I'm basically going to share the YouTube video, do a screen share. So what I'd request is the people that are on the Hangout, if you could please mute your microphones, because I'm having to use the speaker and the mic, super low tech today, to play this video. Once this Hangout is finished, it will be available as a standalone YouTube video as well for you guys to watch. So I'll just start the video and let it run its thing.
Hi everyone, I'm really excited to be here at Animoca today. This is our first interview in Hong Kong in APAC. Sitting on my left is Scooby, the mascot of Animoca/Outbreaks, and on my right is Yusuf, Sultan, and Jonathan. Can you guys please introduce your organization and yourself a little bit?
Sure. My name is Yusuf. I'm the CTO of Animoca. Animoca develops and publishes Android titles. We have 70 million downloads across all platforms. And our most well-known title would be pretty much Salon. Other titles from our library include Mica Salon, 3-Peptide Gold, Forest Defense, Ultimates, and our most recent title on the Google Play Store is Dark City.
Hi, I'm Tom Bremen. I'm the VP of Engineering at Animoca. And I'm John.
Well, that's embarrassing. Hit by buffering. I had pre-buffered this video, or so I thought. Let me just try it once more.
Hi, I'm Tom Bremen. I'm the VP of Engineering at Animoca. And I'm John, Senior Software Developer. I see that a lot of you guys' apps are free. So what is your business model here? So our apps are what you describe, what the industry describes as free game. So they're free to download, and users can pay, and the monetization is for purchasing in-app power-ups, in-app
virtual goods, that will be monetized. We may have some advertising also within the game, which can lead to users consuming those offers and then us getting a revenue share of that advertising. That's the business model. We have a few premium titles also, where we provide both a live version and a paid version, so we experiment with all possible channels.
So what sort of wisdom would you have from your experience to share with our developers?
I'd say that listening to the feedback of your users is very important. Your gamers, they tend to respond well when they complain about something and you fix it 3 days later. And actually that's the important part. You have to iterate fast, and the Google Play Store lets you do that because you publish something and it's up in less than half an hour.
Anything else you guys want to share?
And
maybe developers?
Yeah, something more technical. So some things that we've actually learned, while doing Android development. For example, you should really catch your exceptions all you can. Even sometimes we run time exceptions. Like for example, sometimes you might even need to catch memory exceptions when you're loading a bitmap and things like that. So your app doesn't actually just crash all the time. And using crash reporting tool. I know the Google Play has their application crash reports, but sometimes some of these tools actually give you more low-level or in-depth reports. That's quite expensive. We use Spotlight, but there are many alternatives. Ideally, you should use a real-time one. Available to you actually really quickly. The other thing that I'd like to say is when you have to do concurrent programming, which is really like in Android, and that's something that's really good. You can actually do concurrent programming on other platforms, right? But be careful, especially if you're coming in from a Java background, is trying to use the high-level facilities that you have in Android and Java, like for example the async task and the variable executor, instead of trying to roll your own lower-level constructs and synchronization blocks and things like that. Because those facilities are highly optimized, written by experts and all that. You don't really need to go to that level. The other thing I want to say is sometimes it's unavoidable that you have to use remote services. I know you develop apps, but sometimes you connect to servers, you might have to use third-party services and all that. Try to minimize the number of calls that you need to make to the server, either by caching or be smart about when you call the servers, or better yet, use persistent sockets. And also in terms of network connectivity, you should really test your apps, against high latency environment. That's one thing that we've actually learned, that running from within the office when you have really great connectivity, everything seems to work really well. But once you release your apps, especially for us, impact marketing, where some of the connectivity not so ideal, things begin to happen. So we actually have a tool in-house we call a slot that we can actually customize network latency and networks. And then we test all our apps against that. What I'd like to add is, one of the things we like to focus is, try and ensure that you have as wide a device compatibility as we can, because what we've seen is that users appreciate choice within the Android ecosystem. And if your app works as a large, widespread device model as you can, you tend to, unlike other platforms which has a one-size-fits-all, Android basically you choose whatever price points, whatever features you're looking for, and you got to cater for that. And you never know that variance, which is how many users could come from a device, you may least expect that just because you don't have
Oh yeah, one more thing about permissions. Also, you consider about permissions, and you declare that your app needs to use, because some of them internally their users, some of them are necessarily like tasks. So be conservative about permissions. Great. Thanks for sharing all the great advice. You recently blogged about testing on a lot of devices and when doing your applications. Can you describe the process?
I would say, I mean, the QA teams work pretty early with the developer teams on deciding, what is the feature best, what are the specific things within the game which are potentially going to be good for the developer type. Not only is it just looking at gameplay, and the QA team is like, to some extent also look at this UI probability of monetization is much more if your game works well on a particular device. Right? The effort, to do so, it may not be that much because we've already invested a fair bit into building some infrastructure. Test early, test often, that's an obvious thing. Sultan mentioned that you guys used to have crash reports. Anything I may have with?
Yeah, so we test long before we've done. We work with QA teams and Apple versions, beta versions. We just finished the engine before there's any gameplay. We send it over to QA team, click and solve it. Also, developers themselves test continuously. So we'll just pick it up, ready for the test. We also have automated tools and a lot of games. Sure, I have one here where the game basically plays itself. Characters will move by themselves, and this is actually a great aid for the QA teams because they don't have to manually drag things everywhere, and you can adjust the speed and skip levels and such like that. However, this is not a replacement for actual testing of the release where it helps QA teams during the development process, but when standard ship, they devote a lot of time to testing the release version just to make sure that So it seems like your QA process is both manual and automated.
It is. I mean, you can. There's no way to anticipate on almost every scenario. Like the user might do something, right? So QA tries to capture most of it. We are increasing our level of automation and continue to invest in that. But at the same time, we also are looking at automated, tools for device testing. But nothing beats really seeing. Sometimes you can only see an issue when you have unique sets of devices that I can show all devices. But there's some unique devices which maybe users from North America, we haven't seen because some of them are specifically sold. Like let me take you. This is which one? This is from Vega, which is a Korean brand. It's actually in terms of revenue, I think larger than LG, but pretty much not known outside of Korea, but a lot of our users, since we have a Korean-based use it, right? Now these are some unique devices which it's an antenna, right? And a 13 megapixel camera, right? So this is like miniature and similar things. These are from Japan, and this is from Sharp Aquos. So I guess it's like a miniature version of the televisions which you see everywhere. These are very interesting devices which are starting to pick up the range in Southeast Asia. A 7-inch, what we term in Southeast, or in southern China as Shanzai devices, But they were one of the first ICS devices we could get our hands on. 7-inch, around $100 US. Now the new models are coming, $150 US, dual-core 7-inch ICS tablets. So given these price points, a lot of these devices, and obviously we test against the classic, the Galaxy Nexus, the Asus Transformer, the Transformer Prime. We don't neglect the higher-end devices just because there is one segment, but it shows that the Android ecosystem supports a lot of devices, and users are looking for, various things. I mean, the antenna could be that they're computing, that they want to watch television, a fair bit of the time, so these devices are sold.
Yeah. So I understand this is just a small sample of what you have.
That's the devices that you let us have for a few minutes.
So what kind of advice would you give to our developer for that if they are not able to afford to have such a large test bed?
Focus on your market segment here. Look at which is your main market segment, and maybe focus on that first. That's the most important. If and rather than developers want to grow their market segment, they want to make know that our place is a publisher. Happy to talk to us. If you're looking for a publishing team to grow it, to make your team more widely available.
Yeah, and also you mentioned in one of the blog posts to provide your apps for a wide range of Android devices. So what is actually the opportunity across those ranges for the developer?
So in terms of devices, most people divide into low end and high end, and we see it somewhat half and half. That we see a lot of users using what is perceived to be low end devices relative to the traditional often considered high end devices. In this part of Asia, low end devices maybe because of price affordability are sells much more like Hong Kong and Singapore. Obviously, you can see a lot of more high end devices, right? But Malaysia, Indonesia, India, the low end devices definitely are there. And with these kind of low end devices, people could have multiple devices. They could have a main high end device, and for the children, they could simply say, "Hey, I buy a $100 7-inch device." The growth rate of Android has been tremendous, and that to some extent is because of the ability for manufacturers to quickly iterate and differentiate on price, on features, and how they can reach a market segment.
Great. So I guess that's it for my question. So thank you so much for your time, Yusuf and Sultan and Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan, for the coming. Yeah.
All right. So that was, firstly, we'd just like to thank Animoca for helping us there and being part of that. We hope that was some useful advice. You can see that Animoca is a developer that caters for a wide variety of Android devices, many of which you wouldn't have even heard of. We got to see some of them, and they were kind of sharing their tips for success. So if there's anyone on here on the Hangout right now that has questions around the interview or anything else that we haven't addressed today, now's your chance. If you are watching this as a recorded segment, you can feel free to send us some questions via the Google Moderator link for next week's show as well. So we have Andrew and Thompson on the line. Do you guys have any follow-up questions?
Nope.
All right. Well, I think before we go, though, Anirudh wanted to make an announcement.
Yeah. Hi. This is for developers around National Capital Region of India, which is New Delhi. We are hosting a Code Labs on 3rd August, and this is on SDK and tools in SDK for performance analysis and memory analysis. So the registrations are open for the event, and we have a link shared. Ankur, if you can bring that up on the screen, if you're.
I actually can't. If you can just pop it in the chat for this Hangout, then I can bring it up right now.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, thanks.
So anyway, we'll drop the link in the post on G+, and you can register and join for us for the Code Labs there.
So Anirudh, can you just let us know? You said in India, but sorry, which was it? One event, multiple events? How many cities?
This is one event in New Delhi. We have an office in Gurgaon, Google office, and we'll be hosting it there. And this is one event for now, but we are looking at other events in other cities, but we don't have any plans right now.
Okay, fantastic. And we will make that the link, we'll post it on Android developers, the Google Plus page. We'll also post a link to that video and allow you guys to submit questions, and so we can address them. Anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining those of you that were able to join us on the Hangout. And we will see you next week.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.